Afghans make up one of the largest refugee populations worldwide. There are 2.6 million registered Afghan refugees in the world, of whom 22 million are registered in Iran and Pakistan alone. Another 3.5 million people are internally displaced, having fled their homes, searching for refuge within the country. In light of the rapidly deteriorating security situation in 2021, the number of people fleeing will likely continue to rise. Afghanistan has suffered more than 40 years of conflict, natural disasters, chronic poverty, and food insecurity. Facing an ongoing humanitarian crisis, the resilience of refugees, internally displaced people, and host communities is rapidly reaching its limit. Afghanistan has 3 borders. First, we'll discuss the southern border. Afghanistan shares its southern border with Pakistan. There are 2 main border crossings, Spin Boldak and Torquem. The terrain is very difficult as it is very mountainous and has a desert. Guards, fences, and mountains block the route into northern Pakistan, while the remote Helmand Desert in the south provides a natural barrier. Until recently, the border crossing was highly porous, and for decades, Afghans with tribal or commercial connections passed into and out of Pakistan, largely ignoring the fact that they were in 2 separate countries. Any who tried to make the journey now may find it particularly difficult. Here we see a picture of the Torquem Crossing. Officially, the main crossing at Torquem is open for trade and restricted pedestrian movement, but extra security measures have been added, largely slowing the process for people who wish to enter. Only stranded people on both sides and trucks taking goods into Afghanistan can pass through. It's led to frustration. On 28 August, Pakistani security forces opened fire on Afghans illegally trying to enter Pakistan, killing 2 and wounding 2 more. This picture is at the other main crossing, Chaman, also known as Bin Boldak. It is much more frenzied. Pakistani newspaper Dawn said a few days ago that the crossing was closed, but on Tuesday, the AP reported that several families had made it through, only because they were staying with their families on the Pakistani side, and none had reportedly been given refugee status. A study by the Verso Consulting in March, in conjunction with United Kingdom Aid, said the number of motorable crossing points varies enormously, from as many as 18 to as few as 8, with many only open very inconsistently. Another report that it cites also says that there are a total of 235 crossings on the southern border which are navigable by foot or animal, many of which are crossed with some difficulty. But what's not clear is whether those crossings have now been completely closed or not. At the start of last month, Associated Press reported that Pakistani's military has completed 90% of a fence being constructed along the border and vowed to finish the last section at the western end this summer. The 13-foot-high barrier consists of 2 sets of chain-link fences separated by a 6.5-foot space filled with coils of razor wire and topped with surveillance cameras. In addition, Pakistan has deployed its military along the border to block the incoming waves of refugees. But even if crossing points are open, or there are gaps in the fence, getting there would be a major challenge, as much of the border region is either high in the mountains or surrounded by hundreds of miles of desert. Now we'll take a look at Afghanistan's western border that it shares with Iran. There are 3 main border crossings, Islam Kala, Abu Nasar Farahi, and Zaranj. The terrain here is also quite difficult, as there is a large desert in the south, and in the north there is arid grasslands. The Iranian border is heavily guarded by fencing and lookout posts. And, as we've already mentioned, there is the large desert in the south. Those who travel directly towards Iran will likely cross the Dashit-e Desert, which is Farsi for Desert of Death. This route across rocky and dry land involves people reaching the border town of Zaranj, or taking the other main road in the area further north to the crossing of Islam Kala. This picture is of a satellite image which shows trucks stacked up at the closed Islam Kala border crossing on August the 29th. Iran is already the home to 3 million Afghans as a result of decades of conflict in the country. Between August 6th and 19th, Iranian governments estimate that 2,688 Afghans crossed the border in only 13 days. The majority came through the southern entry point at Zaranj after the Taliban took the surrounding Nimruz province. No mass exodus of people to Iran has been observed yet, but the UN Refugee Agency noted that an increase of numbers is expected. Iran has often provided support to the Hazara Shiite minority in Afghanistan, long persecuted by the Taliban, while many in West Afghanistan share a common Persian language with Iranians. These ties draw some Afghans westward to seek refuge. Yet, sandy walls, trenches, and Iranian guards at the border are there to stop people crossing the 572-mile-long frontier. They reflect the fact that Iran has been far less welcoming of Afghan refugees as of late. In 2020, almost 378,000 Afghans were deported from Iran, and in the same year there were reports of border guards torturing Afghan migrants. Iran has set up camps at 3 places along the border to accommodate incoming refugees, but an Iranian interior official said that these people were expected to return home when the situation improves in Afghanistan. Afghanistan shares its northern border with Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. There are 3 main border crossings in the north: Torgundi, Hayratan, and Sher Khan Bandar. In the north, there are arid grasslands, rivers, and mountainous terrain. The remote Akina border point is one of only 2 crossings into Turkmenistan. Rivers separate much of the border of Afghanistan, which it shares with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. The Turkmenistan border cuts across an expanse of arid scrub and grassland, an environment little more hospitable than the deserts further south. There are 2 official crossings with Turkmenistan. Here we see a picture of the Pange River, which acts as a major barrier to escape for refugees. Further east, the Amudara and Pange rivers act as a divider between the short Afghan-Uzbek border and part of the Afghan border with Tajikistan. Tajikistan is the nation most likely to receive the highest number of Afghan refugees along the northern borders. More than a quarter of Afghans are of Tajik ethnicity. With many provinces in the northeast of Afghanistan, the majority is Tajik. Our next picture is of a border guard who is standing on a bridge across the Pange River on a border outpost. Unlike the borders with Iran and Pakistan, fencing and walls do not cover a large portion of the boundary line with Tajikistan. A shallow point in the river may be enough of an opportunity to make it across. In September, the rivers are usually at their lowest due to a lack of rain. The Tajik government previously said it could take in up to 100,000 Afghan refugees, but quickly rolled back that promise. On the 2nd of September, the Tajik Interior Minister said that the country does not have the capacity to accommodate a large number of refugees and asylum seekers, noting that more infrastructure was required to help people settling across the border. Nevertheless, the Taliban has reportedly set up extra checkpoints on the main road north from Kabul, making getting to the border perhaps as perilous as crossing them for quite some time. Afghanistan shares an extremely small border with China, but even getting to Afghanistan's eastern border through the Wakhan corridor would be a huge challenge. The Wakir Pass is at an altitude of almost 5,000 meters. It is not an official border crossing, and the immediate area beyond the pass on the Chinese side is only accessible to the Chinese military. Getting to it involves travel on an unsurfaced road to the extremely remote settlement of Baza-e-Gonabad. From there, it is just a dirt path for another 50 kilometers. A barbed wire fence has been erected along the border, and the pass is inaccessible for 5 months out of the year due to snow. Some of those who do escape Afghanistan might push on to Europe. Usually it means traveling through Iran, Turkey, Greece, and then on through the Balkans or Italy. Some refugees may take a northern route through Russia and into Europe along its eastern border. On the Turkish border, a 3-meter-high wall with ditches and barbed wire has been erected by the Turkish authorities to block any refugee influx into the country. Here is a picture of the border wall, which has been reinforced in recent weeks. In addition, Greece has completed a 40-kilometer fence on its border with Turkey. Bulgaria has a razor wire fence along most of its 269-kilometer border with Turkey, and pledged to deploy hundreds of troops if they make it through that. Hungary, Slovenia, and Austria have also built fences. Greece also now patrols waterways of the Aegean, often turning back boats that set out from Turkey. If refugees take the northern route, they may also find their progress blocked. Poland began building a barbed wire fence recently to stop any migrants or refugees coming through. Belarus and Lithuania also said they would do the same. With most border crossings now closed, Afghan refugees cannot resort to traditional means to leave the country. Many fled to the airport in Kabul to attempt to escape. The airport is now in the hands of the Taliban, who will closely regulate who is allowed to leave.